guys, it's Nocturnal. Welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I'd just make a video talking about pet ownership and why I believe it's cool. And I personally believe that pet ownership should be banned entirely because living with an animal is just something that's unnatural and primitive, and we should be engaging in such primitive behavior considering we evolved to be such civilized and intelligent creatures. That's just my opinion. Anyways, let's get straight to the video. Okay, so reason number one why I believe owning a pet is cool is because by owning a pet, you are essentially actively engaging in a form of slave ownership. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. One of the many reasons why I firmly believe this is, like this article states, which I will be linking in the description below, pets cannot give consent. So basically anything you do to your pet, like hugging it, kissing it, laying on it essentially can't tell you otherwise or tell you, hey, get off of me, I'm not comfortable with this, because they can't communicate with you in the same way a human being can, and they can't give consent or not give consent. So essentially you are invading an animal's personal space and privacy constantly, and it can't even do or say anything about it because it doesn't know what consent is, first of all. And even if it did, it wouldn't be able to communicate with you that it's giving you consent or not giving you its consent, which is wrong in my opinion. Also, if you were to Google what is a slave, the textbook definition of a slave is a person who is the legal property of another and is forced to obey them. And what's particularly interesting about this is that whenever you communicate with a dog owner and they're bringing up your dog, they'll always say stuff like, hey, do you want to pet my dog? Do you think my dog is cute? Look at my dog. My dog is adorable. It's like they constantly repeat the words, my dog, and they are essentially indirectly asserting dominance over their dog and basically saying, hey, it's my dog. It is my property. I own it. And if you were to look up the definition of slavery, like I just did, it would say in the first part that the definition of a slave is someone who is the property of another. And by saying my dog, you are basically implying that your dog is your property, which it is. It's a fact. A dog is the property of its owner. Going back to the definition of a slave, not only does it say that the person is legally the property of another, but it also says that the person is forced to obey their owner. I find this particularly interesting because this virtually applies to all pets, especially dogs and cats. Because think about it, the dog's owner will tell the dog what it can and can't do. It will tell the dog you can't sit on that. It will tell the dog you can't come in this room, you can't go outside, you can't go inside, you can't wander too far from you. They have the dog on the leash. They'll tell the dog like, hey, you can't eat that, like don't do that, stop doing that, stop barking. And if the dog doesn't do what the owner says, the owner will punish the dog, yell at the dog, and in some cases the owner will even go as far as to get physical with the dog, which I find to be sad because even though I don't like dogs, no animal deserves to be abused and yelled at and punished for simply being an animal and acting on its instincts and doing what animals are supposed to do. On to reason number two why I believe pet ownership is cool. You're keeping your pet prisoner. I mean, think about it. Say you have a job and you own a dog as well, or maybe two, or maybe more than two, whatever. You have to go to work every few days for a certain amount of days in the week, and in those days you're at work for hours at a time. And while you're at work, your dogs are at home, or your dog, whichever, and they are by themselves with a limited amount of food, and they're trapped inside of a house that they can't get out of without the assistance of their owner. So basically, you're keeping it prisoner inside the house, and it's going to be bored out of its mind for hours at a time, and of course it's going to be happy to see you, because it was just isolated inside of a house by itself that it can't get out of with a limited amount of food without any interaction whatsoever. I mean, think about it. Is it just me? I feel like that's really cruel, but that might just be me in my opinion. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Reason number three of why pet ownership is cruel is because no matter what you do, there is no winning. What I mean by this is that no matter what approach you take in owning a dog, you are being cruel to it. think about it. If you own a dog, you are enslaving it and keeping it a prisoner inside of your house. If you decide that you want to release the dog into the wild, you are causing harm to the environment, because as I have already mentioned in my previous videos, virtually all dogs are infested with worms, parasites, harmful bacteria, and viral infections. And if they go out into the environment, first of all, no ecosystem in existence is capable of handling dogs, because they were selectively bred into existence by human beings. Therefore, they can only survive and live and thrive in a human environment controlled by humans. And if they were to go out into nature, they devastate wildlife and throw off any ecosystem that they happen to come across. Because first of all, they're predators. They're going to hunt and kill prey that could go to other predators within that ecosystem. Not to mention, like I said before, all the parasites and harmful bacteria they are host to that is inside of their waste, and they're going to obviously shit and leave their waste everywhere. And that waste could leak into local water supplies within that ecosystem, and any animals that consume that, especially prey animals, could become deathly sick from the harmful bacteria that dogs are host to, and then predators will consume these animals or their corpses and contract these illnesses. So it's just a never-ending cycle, and dogs would devastate wildlife and plant life, because the bacteria within dog shit is harmful to trees and grass. As you can see, this image right here is what happens to a tree when the harmful bacteria in dog waste seeps into it. Do you see that tree? Look at that damage that the dog did. That's what happened almost everywhere if we just decide to set dogs free into the environment. So think about it. If we keep dogs as pets, we're enslaving them and keeping them prisoner. And if we set them free into the wild, then they're going to do harm to the environment. So there is no winning, because regardless of what you do, you are being cruel to the dog, and also being cruel to the dog by allowing it to go out there and possibly get killed by a predator. And the predator could contract diseases from the dog and pass that on throughout the ecosystem that the predator is home to. So no matter what you do, you're being cruel to your dog. So in my opinion, the only logical and merciful thing to do is nothing, because we have selectively bred dogs to be entirely reliant on human beings. So if we just sit by and do nothing, eventually they'll die out on their own. Because think about it, many dogs can't even give birth without being cut open, because of selective breeding messing up their bodies and making them unable to give birth naturally. Which is sad in my opinion, but think about it. If we just sit by and do nothing, eventually the dogs will kill themselves out. So that's the only merciful thing we can do that I can think of. Not purchasing dogs, banning pet ownership entirely, keeping them in these spaces, not allowing them to breed with other dogs, and just waiting until they all die out and go extinct. That's the only merciful thing to do, in my opinion. I do not advocate, I wanted to just make this clear, I do not advocate for the murder or abuse of dogs, but I do think the merciful thing would just to let all currently living dogs live the rest of their lives and not let them have children. So there is no next generation. Dogs just die out, because that's really the only merciful thing to do, considering otherwise owning them is cruel, because slavery and imprisonment, and setting them free into the environment is also cruel, because they're going to devastate wildlife, plant life, cause harm to the environment, and devastate a multitude of ecosystems just by being out in nature on their own. So on that note, I feel like I can end the video here. Thanks for watching. Keep in mind, this topic in particular is purely opinion-based, so if you have a different opinion, feel free to comment it down below. I'd love to read it in my spare time, and I'd love to gain a new perspective and maybe see your side of things, because, sorry, I'm really sweaty. I consider myself to be a very open-minded individual, and I love to hear other people's thoughts and opinions and gain a new perspective on things. And if there's anything in particular you want me to talk about, feel free to comment it down below. I might make a future video on it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Have a damn good day.